Good evening. Welcome to the regular school district meeting for Monday, March 12, 2018. Won't you please rise with me for a moment of reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And now the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mr. Burdell.
Here.
Ms. Bowser. Here. Mr. Chauncey.
Here.
Mr. Elkin.
Here.
Ms. Lote. Here. Dr. Lobby. Mr. Mulroy.
Here.
Mr. Skate. Mr. Smith.
Here.
The Board of School Directors of Armstrong School District convened an executive session on Monday, March 12th at 7:00 p.m. in the Faculty Lounge of West Hills Intermediate School in Katanning for discussion of personnel and real estate.
Thank you. Reports from Central Administration.
Just have one this evening. I'll let Mr. Kirk go ahead and introduce our bond council for this evening.
Yeah, as you're aware, there is a motion on the agenda tonight, resolution to do a new bond issue. Chris Brewer is here tonight, our bond counsel from Dismore and Scholl, to explain this to you. Most of you have heard this before, some of you that are new. This is engaging information Mr. Brewer is going to present to you.
Enthralling was the word you were looking for.
Chris, there are still some, if you could summarize again the not-to-exceed concept, that was something
Sure.
that mattered last time.
Yes, this the action item that's on your agenda, and I placed the resolution at your places this evening, is as we discussed last month, and it's consistent with the way we've been doing your financings of late, and that is to pass with you, if you will tonight, a resolution that would authorize an indebtedness and authorize it for the purposes we specified in this document, but mostly for completing all the work you have underway. The more particular project definitions on page 5, and it's consistent with what we talked about last month. The notion of the not to exceed is as follows. Under Pennsylvania law, the way the statute was written nearly 40 years ago, it always envisioned that you, at the time of the enactment of a resolution authorizing indebtedness, would have in front of you a contract from an investment banker, or maybe if it was a loan from a bank, setting out full terms and final conditions. We have tended over the years in our industry to break from that practice for the reason that linking your actual bond sale and your advent into the marketplace with the exact time and place of a meeting isn't always the best thing to do, particularly when your regular meetings, in your case, tend to be on Mondays, and the market's just opening up, getting its feet under itself, trying to figure out where rates are for the week. So we more often than not tend to now move these to so-called not to exceed or parameter style authorizations, by which you outline in broad brush the kind of transaction you want to see brought to you in the final analysis. And then we limit the banker to certain terms and conditions that are laid out in section 1101 as to the acceptability of that proposal to the administration and to the board president, the limitation on their fees and things like that. But the idea is that we would like to have the freedom that enables the banker, nobody's got a crystal ball, but enables them to sort of selective market or look for the best opportunity, or certainly try to avoid pitfalls. If you said to us, bring us a proposal on a certain night, date certain, and the market was just really bad that day, something had erupted that caused rates to rise, you'd be kind of stuck with those rates. The $14 million is a number much larger than you expect to need to borrow or plan to borrow. I think you're going to shoot for a $10 million amount. That will both be bank qualified and satisfies, I think, Sam's projections, administration's belief that that'll get the work done that you need to do. And I think 9.5, maybe, Sam, or something you just said to the Piper folks you'd like to see funded into the construction fund. $14 million is a number that's purposefully enlarged so that there is not only in the aggregate enough room to do the borrowing that you intend, but the way the law has been interpreted, you've not got to leave enough principal in the schedule to be paid off and amortized each and every year over the term, that by the time you sort of increase every single year in the schedule by a little bit, you come up with a bigger number. And that's not because you're going to borrow $14 million, it's because nobody can be exactly sure where rates are going to go. If they're up or down, or if they vary along the continuum, it may drop more or less principal in a given year. And the banker wants to make sure, and when they run their computer schedules, that there's enough space in every single year to structure the best optimum solution for you. take advantage of rates, take advantage of your existing structure, because you're going to wrap this debt around what you have already on the books. So for that reason, if you go to the schedule that's on page 35, we have in there, or the banker has in there, I got these numbers from Chip McCarthy at Piper, you know, a principal amortization in 2019 of $270,000, a principal amortization of $205,000 in 2020. Chances are those numbers will be much reduced. I mean, I know they'll be much reduced, but we would never know for sure how long this continuum where you might have a need to drop in more principal to fit the overall profile of your debt structure. And if we've, for example, only put a number of, say, $100,000 in one of those years, and we need to put in the final construction of the issue $120,000, now we've handcuffed ourselves. So that's why the number's kind of enlarged over what we really expect it to be. The final bond issue structure will be shown to the administration and the board president, and it'll fit within all these parameters.
And just so you know, I saw as of today what that structure would look like. That actually, if you look on page 36, it's very similar to our 2017 issue that we did. If you want to look at what it's going to be our annual cost to the district, the net debt service. Look at that 2017 column, and it's very similar to that, at least in the beginning years.
Other than that, you know, circumstance, the resolution is otherwise a very standard sort of document in that it authorizes indebtedness, authorizes a filing with the Department of Community and Economic Development, is a pledge of your, you know, full faith, credit, and taxing power, contains federal tax law covenants, securities law covenants, the usual sorts of things when you are going into the public bond market for a bond sale such as this. Piper's advice at this point is, I think, primarily based on the fact that there's not been much activity in the marketplace, and therefore your opportunity to get into the bond market is when you don't have a crowd of other would-be bond sellers, other competing school districts for the, you know, looking for the attention of buyers, is to move ahead this week. And if we do that successfully, then the closing would occur, you know, in a month's time. I think April 17th or so may be a date they were targeting. And at that point, you'd have funds in the bank to continue along with the work you're doing.
Any
Further questions?
Any questions for Mr. Brewer?
No questions? Thank you.
I'm not going away, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other reports from the administration?
That's it for this evening.
Mr. Burdell, did we have an errand meeting?
Yeah, we did have an errand meeting. I have not been able to make one yet. My schedule's been screwed up that way, but I'll be there. I'll be attending a meeting next week for sure. But I think we have a budget that we're going to pass tonight. It's I think the budget's around $3,400,000, I think, somewhere in there, and our cost is $183,000. That's our portion of that. So, and then we have the convention. They call it's going to be at Lenape this year on, I believe it's April 27th. So, it'd be good to see some of us there. It's in our backyard. So, about it.
And who are Lenape reps? Is it Mr. Mulroy? Is he one of our reps? Mr. Smith, are you
What?
a Lenape rep?
Yes, sir.
Did you have a meeting?
We have a meeting Thursday.
Okay.
The meeting will be discussing early budget and then just general stuff.
Okay. All right, moving on. Public comments on agenda items this time. Anybody here to speak on agenda items? Okay. Go to minutes. I'll look for a motion and a second to combine and approve the open caucus session for February 8th and the regular meeting of February 12th. I have a motion and a second.
Motion.
Ms. Lowe and Mr. Burdell. Roll call?
Mr. Burdell?
Yes.
Ms. Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Chauncey?
Yes.
Mr. Elkin?
Yes.
Ms. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Mulroy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Number voting yes, 7. Number voting no, 0. 2 absent. Motion carries.
Look for a motion and a second to combine and approve the bills with the food service fund for February, 2018 capital projects fund for February, athletic fund for January, and a presentation of bills for payment for February. Do I have a motion and a second? Ms. Bowser and Mr. Mulroy. Roll call.
Ms. Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Chauncey?
Yes.
Mr. Elkin?
Yes.
Ms. Lote?
Yes.
Mr. Mulroy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Burdell?
Yes.
Number voting yes, 7. Number voting no, 0. 2 absent. Motion carries.
The personnel, look for a motion and a second to combine and approve personnel 1 through 14, except those items that are for information only. Motion and a second.
So
Mr.
moved.
Mulroy? Ms. Lowe? Roll call?
Mr. Chauncey?
Yes.
Mr. Elkin?
Yes to all except I abstain from purse 6.
Ms. Lote?
Yes.
Mr. Mulroy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, except personnel 12, I abstain.
Mr. Burdell?
Yes.
Ms. Bowser?
Yes.
Per 6 and per 12, we had number voting yes, 6, number voting no, 0, 2 absent and 1 abstention. And the remainder of the items, number voting yes, 7, number voting no, 0, 2 absent, motion carries.
Education, there are 5 items. Run-of-the-mill student transfer requests, an Aaron's cash match, West Shamokin overnight senior class trip, an overnight field trip for AHS band members, and approval of special ed plan report. I'll look for a motion and a second to combine and approve Ed 1 through 5.
So moved.
Mr. Mulroy and Mr. Smith. Any other discussion about any of those items? We'll discuss some of that Thursday. Any other discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Elkin?
Yes.
Ms. Lote?
Yes.
Mr. Mulroy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Burdell?
Yes.
Ms. Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Chauncey?
Yes.
Number voting yes, 7, number voting no, 0, 2 absent, motion carries.
Okay, we're gonna, we'll group, we have a number of items under business. Okay, we're, look for a motion and a second to combine and approve business 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. So a motion and a second to combine 1 through 4 and 6.
Make a motion.
Mr. Bordeaux
So moved.
and Mr. Mulroy. Any discussion about any of those items? And one is the authorization for the addition of security guards for the schools for the remainder of the year. No other discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Lote?
Yes.
Mr. Mulroy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Burdell?
Yes.
Ms. Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Chauncey?
Yes.
Mr. Elkin?
Yes.
Number voting yes, 7, number voting no, 0, 2 absent, motion carries.
Business 5 is a formal action constituting a debt ordinance under the Local Government Unit Debt Act. Need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Mr. Elkin and Mr. Mulroy. Any further discussion?
Just one. The pamphlet we got last month, that's that's what we're voting on, right? Recall this?
The 9.5?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and just to clarify that, I know there was a question asked at a previous meeting about 9.5 and whether or not we could use some money from the fund balance. Wasn't here Thursday, so I apologize for not having an explanation for that. But after reviewing that, we have budgeted this year to use a little over $1 million out of fund balance to balance the current year budget. So far as we're working in next year, we're about $1.5 million short as well, so we might need to take money from the fund balance there. We don't know what we need to do yet with Canning High School, whether or not we need to tear that down. If so, we'll probably use fund balance from that, plus what's remaining from the grant that we got. And so at this time, it'd be our recommendation from administration not to reduce that amount, but to borrow the full 9.5 and save other fund balance for other things, as offsetting the deficit in our budgets and other emergencies that might come up.
And this is the principal payments. This payment schedule
Well, it
is,
depends on when it closes out. We don't know that until the bonds are actually sold. That was the projection as the date,
right.
what the interest rate was.
Well, it's not
But
gonna-
those interest rates fluctuate day to day. So, I'm looking at the same one you're looking at, as a date, what date are you looking at?
I'm looking at an annual, I'm out looking at the annual principal payments.
Was that February 15th?
Yeah, I think you're looking at a gross debt service, meaning principal and interest over the life at $19,682,000. Is that the one you're looking at?
I'm looking at 19,456, but we're close.
Okay, I'm looking at the one that was a week earlier.
The one I received today, okay, which was updated numbers,
Okay,
it was 19.6,
okay,
so it has changed.
okay, 19.6.
But again, that's based on a borrowing of 9.5.
That's based on us netting 9.5.
Oh, we're netting 9.5.
We're netting 9.5.
Okay, so we have to add,
Closing costs and other stuff on top of that.
okay, so it's actually borrowing more than 9.5.
It's, the objective was
Probably
to,
9.7,
the objective was to net 9.5.
then the principals will be $5,000 a month, or an annual, or 50, something like that.
It's $5,000 a year until the end of the time when, with the wrap, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion, questions? Other discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Mulder?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
No,
Mr. Burdell?
Yes.
Ms. Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Chauncey?
Yes.
Mr. Elkin?
Yes.
Ms. Loeb?
Yes.
Number voting yes, 6. Number voting no, 1. 2 absent. Motion carries.
3 items under maintenance, all having to do with the work around West Shamokin High School for canopy repair work, solicitation of bids for canopy repair. So I'll look for a motion and a second to combine and approve M1 through M3.
So moved.
Mr. Mulroy, Ms. Loeb, any discussion about those maintenance items? Roll call?
Mr. Smith?
yes.
Mr. Burdell?
Yes.
Ms. Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Chauncey?
Yes.
Mr. Elkin?
Yes.
Ms. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Mulroy?
Yes.
Number voting yes, 7. Number voting no, 0. 2 absent. Motion carries.
C1, purchase of progress turf for the West Shamokin Junior Senior High School Stadium. Need a motion and a second. C1. Mr. Mulroy, Mr. Burdell. Any discussion or questions?
Just clarification, we already authorized the purchase of the turf, which was $749,000 last month. These are additional items that were listed under that proposal that at one time were a little bit around $100,000. We went back and discussed things with them, cut some out, got some clarification on some, and now the total is $82,656.60 of additional items.
What are those additional items mostly?
Some additional synthetic turf to expand the field, which it brings it all the way out to where the fences are to the drainage is currently. Removal of broken fencing, replacement of almost 1,200 linear feet of new black vinyl fence. There is, those were the 2 big ones, and there's another big one is sidewalk paving and paving the ramps to the field. It costs about $28,500. So those 3 things that I mentioned are about 95% of the cost. The other ones are just some small ancillary things.
And the one is for ADA, a lot of that, right? The 28.5.
Number six with the paving.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, because actually, my understanding is that the current sidewalks that we have are not ADA compliant, are not wide enough, and also fixing the ramps to make them ADA compliant.
Any other questions? Roll call?
Mr. Burdell?
Yes.
Ms. Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Chauncey?
Yes.
Mr. Elkin?
Yes.
Ms. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Mulroy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Number voting yes, 7. Number voting no, 0. 2 absent. Motion carries.
Student transportation services, the approval of bus drivers for 2017-18. Need a motion and a second. Mr. Mulroy, Mr. Burdell. Roll call?
Ms. Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Chauncey?
Yes.
Mr. Elkin?
Yes.
Ms. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Mulroy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Burdell?
Yes.
Number voting yes, 7. Number voting no, 0. 2 absent. Motion carries.
Policy, look to, for a motion and a second to combine policy 1 through 8. Motion, Mr. Burdell, Ms. Bowser. The solicitor reviewed these policy changes on Thursday. Is there any other discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Chauncey?
Yes.
Mr. Elkin?
Yes.
Ms. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Mulroy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Burdell?
Yes.
Ms. Bowser?
Yes.
Number voting yes, 7. Number voting no, 0. 2 absent. Motion carries.
General, there are 2 items, the adoption of the 2018-19 school calendar and the Aaron IU 28 general operating budget for 2018-19. A motion and a second to combine and approve Gen 1 and 2. Ms. Lowe? Mr. Mulroy? Any discussion around the calendar or the interim budget? Roll call?
Mr. Elkin?
Yes.
Ms. Lode?
Yes.
Mr. Mulroy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Burdell?
Yes.
Ms. Bowser?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Number voting yes, 7. Number voting no, 0. 2 absent. Motion carries.
Anything under the other folder?
No additional items.
Anything else from other board members? Need a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion?
Mr. Burdell? Mr. Mulroy? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.